Thank you, Presiding Officer. We as a Parliament pride ourselves on openness and accountability in relation to the behaviour of all our MSPs. The question, of course, is could we do more to build public trust and make sure we have a regime that is fit for purpose, because robust standards are essential to ensure that should wrongdoing occur, there are sufficient checks and balances to hold MSPs to account. And this bill seeks to increase transparency and accessibility. These are important matters, and the Parliament must always be keeping these under review and make improvements where the opportunity arises. And let me take this opportunity to thank Parliament for the establishment of a committee to take this bill forward, provided that is it receives the support of members at 5 o'clock tonight. And I thank those who participate in the debate for their engagement in what is an important topic for our future probity and reputation. Turning to a few of the things that have been raised in the debate, the Minister mentioned the reduction in gifts from 1% to 0.5%. That's a subject we first discussed in committee on the 10th of October 2013. That stems, of course, from the Groupe d'État contre la corruption, which is something that we are following. The Minister also referred to the Electoral Commission, and we've helpfully got a briefing from the Electoral Commission that makes clear that they are satisfied with what we're doing, in particular that the Electoral Commission will be able to obtain the necessary information that they require from the standards clerks in this place to meet their future publication compliance and enforcement options. Tavish Scott, I particularly welcome his coming along and bringing his considerable experience to bear on this subject, and I'll just pick up a couple of the points that he made. I think the Minister has already indicated that ministers are caught by this, and I was going to make that point, that certainly in respect of their behaviour as MSPs. The interesting point that was made by Tavish Scott in relation to soliciting rewards, in section 9 of the bill that's before us, we introduce the phrase "or agreeing to receive." It's certainly our intention that that would catch soliciting, but I will take further advice from the clerks to see if any further amendments that might just make beyond misapprehension that quite clear, because it's quite clear that soliciting would be as unacceptable to any of us as agreeing to receive. In relation to political parties funding members' activities in their constituencies and elsewhere, we're seeking to catch the whole issue of funding of political activities by members by some of the amendments we have. But largely, and in particular in relation to elections, the Electoral Commission already catch that activity in the reporting that political parties require to make to them, and which are, of course, published on the website. And, of course, equally, we do make reference to the period of election, when, of course, electoral returns, financial returns have to be made, and make some provision for when money that's solicited for that purpose is not spent within the 35 days of the motion. Now, I want to just pick up of the election. I want to just pick up one or two other points that have arisen and that I perhaps can say a little bit more about. First of which, I promised I'd say a little bit about motion of censure. It would serve as a useful middle ground where the Standards Committee found a member to be in breach, but where we did not consider the breach to be sufficiently serious to justify a sanction such as exclusion or removal of other parliamentary privileges. Now, such a motion could be debated, providing the MSP who is the subject of the motion with a public opportunity to apologise in person. I believe a motion of censure would be a useful addition to the Parliament's toolkits of sanctions. I also mentioned the bill's provisions for retention of members' registers, and we've already heard from Mary Fee a great deal about that. I think keeping the register for 10 years, as distinct from the current 5, is going to be particularly useful in general, but specifically where people have what you might term broken service and come back. There are also practical reasons in that it just helps members see what they had previously said, and it will increase transparency overall. The current timescale of 5 years was previously just set in relation to the period when people were elected, but of course it's reasonable to extend it. Additional transparency for the public has got to be good news, and keeping it for longer helps that, letting the public see what's going on. Now, at the moment, all the information that we're referring to is on the Parliament's website, but also held by the Electoral Commission, depending on the nature of the interest. But this bill will mean that people much more readily can come to one place, but it will also help members to comply with the two regimes. I think most of us have comparatively modest operations that involve the Electoral Commission in this respect, but when it occurs, it will be something we're unfamiliar with, and we don't have sources of advice in the Parliament. This changes. And in paid advocacy, I repeat once again, as others have, we've never seen these rules breached. And the changes that we want to make today are important in signalling to everyone how important we regard these as. But at the end of the day, it is down to the personal probity of each and every one of us, not merely the rules that appear in the book. The provisions in the bill are going to make sure that we are in both places, and that's a comfortable place to be. Presiding Officer, I'm delighted to be able to close this debate. I'm delighted that we've had the opportunity to take this bill forward through stage one. I reconfirm that I look for the Parliament's agreement and the general principles of this committee bill. I hope, as the Minister suggests, that we might see a greater number of committee bills in future sessions, not all simply related to our internal business. But this is an important bill, increases transparency, ensures our procedures remain robust. Presiding Officer.